Nantucket holds a unique place in the musical universe. It has to do with 6 pipe organs on our island. The Nantucket Arts Council spent time recently talking with the organists who currently perform on these instruments. They explained their fascination with the pipe organ and what makes it special to them. The Nantucket Arts Council is pleased to present this project. Together, we will learn a bit of history about the instruments and hear some performances. The first organs were installed in 1831 in the Methodist Church and the Unitarian Church. St. Paul's Episcopal Church and the First Congregational Church followed quickly with organ installations in the early 1900s. There are even 2 pipe organs in the Congregational Church, one in the summer church and one in the vestry. In 2001, St. Mary's Church installed a pipe organ, so now there are 6, and 2 are almost 200 years old. It is unique to have this many pipe organs in a town our size. Many organists around our country recognize Nantucket as a special location for pipe organs. Today, we will take a tour of 5 of them with Organists Joe Hammer, Jeffrey Cutts, Kezia Duarte, and Isaiah Williams. Kezia and Isaiah are both graduates of Nantucket High School.
I'm Isaiah Williams. I was born here, and I currently study at the Eastman School of Music in Rochester, New York, for the pipe organ. This is my thing. But when I'm home, I do other stuff too. I sometimes work at the Whaling Museum. I sometimes play the piano. For all the talk about how fun we think organs are, I do also like the piano, but the organ's my thing. I don't remember a specific moment, but I remember a general feeling, which was the piano is fun, and this specific church is the reason. I remember they would always have the front door open, and you can, in this church, the Methodist church, you can see the organ from the street, and as a 8-year-old, the gold pipes and dark wood are really nice to look at, and I really wanted to come in and touch it and play it. And because I was already taking piano lessons, and the minister at the time, Nancy Nelson, was really nice, she let me come in with my mom, not by myself as an 8-year-old, but I could play it. And granted, I've now since learned, I didn't know what I was doing. I was probably lightly slapping. It's old, I don't want to break it, but I was probably just kind of doing that. But it was fun enough that I wanted to keep doing it. And now I know more things about it, which is cool. I prepared a piece that I wrote called Melancholy Promenade. And I chose that because this organ, out of all of the organs in the United States, is really, really, really weird. And it's really hard to choose pieces to play on it. Most organs have a lot more pedals. And so I can't choose a piece that's written for an organ with lots of pedals because I'll just run out of notes. There should be notes over here that I can't play. So I chose something that I wrote because I can change what I wrote. It's much easier, and I feel better doing it than changing something that someone else wrote. And this organ is from 1831, it was a long time ago. But he lived in Boston, and it was built for a church in Boston. And they moved it here in the 1850s. I think it used to be up there, and at some point they moved it down here in front of behind the altar. But it's been on Nantucket for a very long time, even though it wasn't built for this church. The Goodrich that we're going to go to in the Unitarian Church was installed by Mr. Goodrich in that church, so it sounds really good in that room. This one was shipped here by someone, and Thomas Appleton had nothing to do with it, so it sounds kind of quiet. It's still quite lovely and pretty, but it's, people often think of organs as loud, powerful things, and when you pull on every single stop on this organ and sit in the back of the room, it's not really that loud.
I'm Jeffrey Cutts. I'm the Minister of Music at the First Congregational Church here on Nantucket. I'm also a founding member of the Nantucket Pipe Organ Association here on Nantucket. And I am a general musician, performer, director, all sorts of things out here. But here I am at the organ at the First Congregational Church. And for anyone out there who is on TikTok, I made a TikTok about a year ago with an organist named, his TikTok name is West Piper, his name is Wesley Hall. But we made a TikTok where we played this organ with no electricity at all, and I actually pumped the hand pump while he played something for us on the organ. So that's one of the most fun things about this particular instrument. The other thing I really like about it is just the diversity of sounds that it has. So it has everything from, very fluty sounds like this melodia, very much like a flute. There is the trumpet stop, which sounds very reedy. Sounds almost more like bagpipes than a trumpet, but if you can soften it with that melodia, you can get a sort of trumpety sound. So it sounds like a trumpet. You can make these different things happen. So there's even an oboe stop on the swell division. One of my favorite stops on the whole organ. And there's even a division known as the strings division, which is actually meant to emulate the sounds of a string orchestra. So you start out with long pedal tones and just holding down one long bass note while you play above it. And you kind of work your way up from there. But the fun and the ability to play an instrument like this that has some of the quietest sounds and some of the loudest sounds you've ever heard with no real amplification other than its natural acoustics is so thrilling. It's like having an orchestra at your fingertips. And I think for somebody who just loves music, and for someone like me who is interested in conducting, that was so the appeal too, is just to feel like I was in control of an entire ensemble just sitting here. And yeah, it's overwhelming, but like anything else, you start at the beginning. You start with the basics, and anything can be learned with practice. Every organ you play is different. Everyone's made by a different builder. Everyone's made it in a different year. Even the ones made by different builders are made for different spaces with a different purpose, with different sounds in mind. And I think that's the magic of it. There's endless creativity to that outlet. And I think that is the real gem of the whole experience, is that it is an outlet for creativity, and you can make more sounds with an organ than you could even dream of on a piano. Yes, there are lots of things you could do with piano. It's an incredible instrument, lots of different sounds and staccato, legato, extended technique and all that, but an organ is playing different instruments with one hand at the same time. So I chose Fanfara Festiva by Carson Kuhlman for this project. And so Carson Kuhlman, first of all, he is the organist at Harvard Memorial Church in Cambridge. But his family has a large history on this island. He's been playing the organs on this island since he was a boy. Really, nobody knows the organs on Nantucket better than Carson does. He's played every single one, probably more than almost anybody in the last 30 years or so. He cares about these instruments. He's played every single one, since he was a teenager. And so yeah, which is to say that, he's written some great music that works really well for these. And I think that one was particularly fun to play, which is why selfishly I chose that particular Carson piece. But there you go.
My name is Joe Hammer. I'm the Director of Music and Organist here at St. Paul's Church in Nantucket. And what I'm going to be playing this afternoon is two pieces, a suite by Carson Kuhlman. It's called Two Nantucket Sketches, actually. And the first one is Idyll, and the second one is Danza Rustica, which has a very sea chanty kind of feel to it. I actually started taking piano lessons when I was 5, and as it turns out, my grandmother was a church organist at a small church in Indiana, and so I kind of grew up around organs. When I was in 7th grade, the band director in the town where I grew up had taken organ lessons, and he offered to teach me. And so he was the one that started me as far as like classically training on the organ. I've had an organ builder tell me that the last stop on an organ is the acoustics of the space. So that's going to make a difference. And then again, each organ is kind of designed for the space, how large it is, so that there are a couple of instances to where I know churches have actually put in an organ that's too big for the space. And so consequently, they don't use it that much because it's too much sound. It blows people literally away. So this particular instrument, you know, it really, because it's unique unto itself, that's what makes it different in some respects. And this one particularly happens to have a really loud pedal trumpet, which most of them here in the island don't. I'll just play it real quick here. This is the deepest tone on the instrument. And so, you know, that's nice to have, which is again kind of unique for this instrument. When you push in the stop, it stops the sound. So it's a literal, because it's called a stop, because it stops the sound. And the other fun thing is that when you, the saying, you know, when someone pulls out all the stops for a project or whatever they're doing, it literally comes from the fact that when you pull out all the stops, it's as loud as an organ can get. So that's pulling out all the stops. So there's definitely, you know, the opportunity to be very creative, and it's really fun too, as far as like when it's not a church service, it's fun to select pop stuff or jazz or whatever else that is out there, and even things that are not written specifically for the organ. There's the opportunity, if you want to read the printed music, there are a lot of transcriptions that organists throughout the years and even today will take a very popular tune and transcribe it specifically for this instrument. So there's a huge range of opportunity to put your own stamp on what you're playing. I mean, there was a whole thing where people would come to hear an organ concert because that was a way to hear pop music. It was a way, or whatever the contemporary popular music of the day was. It was a way for them to go, if they didn't have an orchestra in the town, you could hear some of these large orchestral pieces that had been transcribed for the organ. It was the opportunity to hear those things. So there were many, and the organist would be on the payroll of the town or the city. Currently, there are only 2 left. Portland, Maine has a municipal organist, and they still give concerts. And San Diego, California has a municipal organist, and it happens to be outside in San Diego. So you've heard a lot about organ pipes. And so I thought it might be kind of interesting to actually see some. Organ pipes can be made out of metal. These particular ones, I've got 2 here, are made out of wood. They're both pedal pipes. This one's I'm 5'7", so this is like 5.5 feet or so. And the reason it sounds is because when the air goes in from the bottom here, it comes past this notch, just like a
recorder or like a little handheld, 2D whistle kind of thing. Same concept. That's what makes the sound. Now this one I've got also here is smaller and I can actually play it. So this is also a pedal pipe and it's smaller, and all you have to do to make it sound an organ pipe.
Hi, I'm Kezia Duarte. I'm 25. I'm the Assistant Director of Music at St. Mary's and a true Nantucket native. This organ is from the Bigelow Company and is the newest organ on Nantucket, and it belongs to the parish of St. Mary's Catholic Church. And the piece that I have prepared for you is a prelude style of Amazing Grace. In terms of playing, I am the Assistant Director of Music at St. Mary's Catholic Church. So I get the opportunity to play this organ every weekend for our Saturday night vigil at 5 o'clock. If our co-worker, Jeff Cutts, isn't here, and then I am set in stone to play every Sunday morning at the 8 a.m. and 11 a.m. service. In terms of practicing, because I can't bring it home, I have the keys to let myself in and be able to dabble and figure out the sounds that I want for every service, any time of any day. So I practice almost every day for at least an hour or two. I think the favorite thing that I have learned is the bass pedals on the organ just add that much more texture and, dare I say, oomph. I pull those bass pedals often, very, very often. And even if the church isn't full, I think the sound through the acoustics of this church really help with the clarity of the music that I'm playing. And if not, the bass pedals will certainly wake up all the people at the early mass on a Sunday morning. I felt as if the organ was a challenge. I am that kind of person that will tackle a challenge head on. And back in high school under Robbie Berman, being 16, I was like, you know what? If he's willing to show me, I'm gonna tackle this head on. So that's exactly what happened. I learned a fugue in high school, and I kind of kept that in my back pocket as I kept learning and growing. And I think that was one of the things I started to play the first time I met Joe. So I was hoping to impress him with that. The most inspiring thing for sure is how my life has progressed and being able to step into Assistant Director of Music. It made the challenge of the organ that much more intriguing, to be able to make sure that people not only hear a piano, which in our congregation they've heard for a long time now, to be able to have sort of a hybrid person, to be able to do both. And for me at a young age, knowing that I can learn fairly quickly still, in a sense, that I can pick it up and be able to do it every weekend has probably been the most inspiring part for me. And that starfish history, it was actually part of an idea for a cabinet maker. And he thought he'd bring it into St. Mary's Church and put it here instead of as a knob for a cabinet.
Oh, there you go. I didn't know that.
I had that in my notes. This up top is a starfish Zimbelstern. It's a fun little knob to add some flair to any song. Makes praise and worship, I think, that much more prayerful and enjoyable. Then this one in St. Mary's is the only one that is actually connected with the organ, so I can pull it through a knob. I believe there's another church on island that has one as a separate entity, but we are the only one that has it right in the center.
Today I played the Chant de Mai, which is French for the Song of May, and it's by Joseph Jongen, who is Belgian, and none of us, very few of us probably speak French, and so that we're not used to pronouncing that kind of name, but I chose it mainly for the reason that I just learned it and I know how to play it, and it's fresh, and that's fun. That's a nice thing to be able to do, but also it is colorful and interesting, and this organ is a little less colorful and interesting than some of the ones that maybe Joseph Jongen was thinking of, but it still makes the piece nice, makes it sing. We're in the Unitarian Church, with the clock, and this is a William Goodrich organ, also from 1831, which is weird, because that's not a very common year for stuff, but this one was installed by him in this room, and so it's the right amount of loud for this room and the right amount of soft, and it just sounds really good in here. And it's cool and old and has all the cool pipes and stuff. My mother inspired me just by the fact that she was playing music all the time in a capacity that seemed fun and also like livable. Like it wasn't like she was struggling to do that on the side of something else, which meant that it was possible that you could just do this and make a living. But also it's really fun to do this. If you're doing this for a living, that means people pay you to like practice and do it well, which is fun, because then you don't have to make money elsewhere and you can do the fun thing while they pay you. It checks off several boxes at once. So every organ is different, which might be obvious from what we're saying, but they're different in a predictable way. It's like on a car air conditioning or radio setup, like the buttons often look different and have different names and are in different places, but you can figure out what they do. Like it's not incomprehensible to you if you've been in a car before. So if you've played an organ before and you know some of the names of the stops, you can find them, or sometimes they have different names, but they sound the same and you have to test it by hearing. And on Nantucket, the organs are all really old. So like, you might have seen I was like changing things and then I was reaching over and I was changing things over here, and on newer organs that weren't built in 1831, you know, organs that were built in 1950, 1920, 2003, there's like buttons in the middle of the keyboards here, so you can just be playing and you can press a button with your thumb which would like bring that on, and then press another one that would bring all that off, which is easier for most people and is a good design. I think I'm better than most people at like reaching over and doing this by hand, because most people off island who play the organ are used to having these buttons. But I'm also not that great at using the buttons because I'm used to going over there while you're playing, which is admittedly harder. At this point, I had to add the great dulciana, which is like a string. Also, organ stops are often named after like medieval instruments for some reason. So a dulciana was something that you would have known what it was in like 1355 in Europe. And for some reason we still use the name, but it sounds like a string, or it's supposed to, as opposed to a flute. That's the goal. So there I had to add the dulciana, I had to go over here and add this fugara, which is also a string for some reason, add an open diapason, get rid of the oboe. I had to do all that, and it's hard to remember that because you're playing. Playing is hard enough, so you have to write it down.
So sometimes you might have an assistant.
Yes. If you're not on an organ with pistons, which are the little buttons here, you usually use an assistant. When you're just sitting in the audience for a concert, it's really great that I can just play the notes and my assistants will do everything. When you're maybe filming in an organ loft, the assistant would have to stand right in front of the camera, so I did it instead. But yeah.